So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Texas OnCourse monthly webinar series for the 2020-2021 school year. Our topic for the month of October is Understanding the Texas Success Initiative Assessment 2.0, also known as the TSIA, or now the TSIA2. The release of the TSI2 means changes to college readiness benchmarks across the state. And today we have experts from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board who will provide the most up-to-date information on the assessment. Attendees will also have an opportunity to ask questions and also hear from school leaders on what their TSI testing practices are, and we'll be able to share some ideas. So with Texas OnCourse, all Texas students, no matter where they come from or where they're headed, have a plan for success after high school. We have a record high number of attendees this morning, which is fantastic. And thank you all for taking the time out to join us. We know you all are very busy this school year. But some of you might be new to Texas OnCourse. So we are a state-funded initiative designed to improve college and career advising and readiness across the state of Texas. We operate out of the University of Texas at Austin, and we work very closely in collaboration with the Texas Education Agency, the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board, and also the Texas Workforce Commission. We also send out a link. We post our webinars on YouTube. So we provide a recording to all of our attendees and to those who have registered but were unable to join live. That link is a link to YouTube here. So if you could take a minute and like and subscribe our channel on YouTube, then you will be able to receive updates, and you can also search our webinar series and other videos that we have on our channel by topic. So this is our agenda for this morning. We have a lot of information to cover. We have a quick welcome and introduction for our guest speakers. And then Samantha Gonzalez has a resource spotlight from our content and resources team here at Texas OnCourse to talk about our materials within the Academy on the TSI. And then we have Keelan Morgan as our expert guest speaker from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board that has all of the updates you all are here for. And then we always like to cover some district perspectives and the systems that go on in our K-12 school districts. So we have Allison Jasso, Coordinator of Guidance and Counseling, who's joining us this morning from Brazosport ISD. And we have a couple of questions that you can use the chat box for and some questions toward the end. And we have reserved from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. this morning for our webinar. My name's Laura Guggen, and I'm Assistant Director of Program Implementation here at Texas OnCourse. And my background is as a college and career coordinator and as a school counselor in Texas and in several other states. Samantha?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Samantha Gonzalez, Program Manager within the Content and Resources team here at Texas OnCourse. And at Texas OnCourse, I support the curation, creation, and maintenance of content and resources within Texas OnCourse offerings.
Keelan?
Good morning. My name is Keelan Morgan. I'm the Program Specialist for Developmental Education at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and my primary role is to assist in the oversight of the Texas Success Initiative, the state's college readiness initiative.
Great. And Allison?
Good morning. I'm Allison Hasso. I'm the Coordinator of Guidance and Counseling for Brazosport ISD. We are a district of about close to 12,000 students, about an hour south of Houston, Texas. This is my 21st year in public education, including 10 years as a high school counselor, and this is my 5th year in the role as a coordinator.
Okay, so before we get started with some of our updates, I know that the TSIA2 release is a big, quite a significant change. We would just love to hear from the folks in the webinar. How are you feeling about the TSIA2 release? And there's no wrong answers here. We're just really curious to hear what folks are anticipating. I see ready, I see curious, I see anxious. Nervous for students. 2020 is a tricky year to roll this out. I see excited, uncertain, looking for resources, needing more info, curious moving forward, can't wait. I love the enthusiasm. Sure, I think a lot of people are just interested in getting those updates. Second chance option. This is fantastic. So I think a lot of these curiosity questions and requests for information will be covered today. I know we've had a lot of interest in this webinar, and it's really, really great information. So we are going to go ahead and get started with Samantha on our resource spotlight.
Good morning again. I'm going to highlight one of our modules in the Texas OnCourse Academy. And for those on the webinar new to Texas OnCourse, the Academy is our online professional learning resource for college and career advising. It's free for all Texas educators and will help you prepare any student for any post-secondary option to get to the Academy from our homepage. Simply click on the tools drop-down menu and select Texas OnCourse Academy. And on that page, click Educator Login to create your free account. Here's an example of the Texas OnCourse Academy layout and dashboard once you have logged in and you want to check your progress and explore all the modules. To support, build your foundational knowledge about the Texas Success Initiative Assessment, or the TSIA, complete the module in the Academy. It has been updated to reflect information about the TSIA2 that has been published so far. In this module, you'll discover which students need to take the TSIA, what subject areas are included, and how to assist your students and families with the TSIA registration process. You'll also get to explore how to identify TSIA dual credit requirements and what information should be shared with students and families about the TSIA completion process. You can locate any learning resource about the TSIA that was included in the module in the additional resources section at the end of the module within the Academy or at our Pinterest page. So in partnership with the Higher Education Coordinating Board, Texas OnCourse is launching a new module this fall, advising all students to be college ready. It's very exciting. This module will be located within the post-secondary pathways content area and under the foundational knowledge badge. With this module, educators will be able to explain the TSI and the TSIA2, summarize what it means to demonstrate college readiness in K-12 and post-secondary, and describe the impact of meeting and not meeting college readiness, and much more. We would also like to thank the educators who were able to participate in the pilot during such a busy time. We received some great feedback that not only confirms the need for the module, but also helps shape the content and resources. So thank you. And I'll pass it over to Keelan.
Good morning, and hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Sometimes my laptop does a tricky thing and it comes across a little muffled. So if at any time it goes unclear, if one of the OnCourse staff can just jump in and let me know, I'll definitely do my best to adjust to make sure we have a clear recording. So jumping right in, next slide, I'll share with you a number of details regarding the Texas Success Initiative 2.0, as well as the implementation, and hopefully we'll have time and I'll be able to answer and address some of your questions. I saw your response to the question that was posed, and as stated earlier, hopefully by the end of this presentation, some of the anxiousness will be reduced, some of the uncertainty will be cleared up, and you'll have answers to some of those things that you've been wishing to know about the assessment. So first, I'd like to share, this is actually the first rollout of some of this information, so you're hearing it legitimately fresh off of the press. We'll talk about, again, I'll recap the TSIA2, the TSIA testing options available to you during COVID. And then I'll jump right into the TSIA2, an overview and the implementation. I'll highlight the implementation timeline, the enhancements. I'll even go through a number of the test specifications, as well as I'll share with you the proposed college readiness benchmarks, and then I'll share with you a little bit of contextualized information, and then we'll have time for questions. Next. So just to recap, due to the disruption with COVID-19, we all know that it impacted our normal business operations. Schools were closed, IHEs, testing centers were closed. So we offered institutions the opportunity to administer the TSIA in a number of ways that weren't previously available. And the first was through the virtual remote proctoring service, Examity. And note here, there was some confusion that only the live version, or where there's a human monitor involved, is the only approved version. Examity actually offers three types of administration, two of those being automated or artificial intelligence options, which are not approved for use with the TSIA. In advance, I know some of you, because I actually was reviewing the data this morning, we had over 6,700 administrations with the automated version that was not supposed to be used. However, one thing that we always do at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, we always act in the best interest of student success and the student. So for any administrations that did take place under the automated or AI versions, those scores will be honored. Institutions will honor the scores. You'll see no difference in the way that they're handled. However, note the automated options for Examity are not approved for use with the TSIA. And it's for a number of reasons, primarily the security protocols in which we cannot come to a significant comfort level with. So again, I just repeat, because I know I'm gonna get 3 or 4 emails. If you've administered the TSIA via the Examity AI platform, and those students have already taken those assessments, those scores are fine, the tests will be accepted. However, I do encourage you, if you've already issued vouchers for the Examity automated, you will need to go in and cancel those. I did look at some data, and there are a number of those that were still active. We'll be reaching out to you individually in terms of as institutions to address that. But note going forth that the automated or AI versions of Examity are not approved for use for the administration with the TSIA. The other option you have available to you is the video web chat services. So that's WebEx, GoToMeeting, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, BlueJean, etc. The list goes on. And that's where it operates just as you're using your same proctors at your institution, and you're going through all of the security protocols. And again, that human monitoring with the student, again, via a virtual web chat service. And note, we are monitoring this data, and test options may change at the discretion of the THECB. Next. And if by chance you are using virtual web chat services, here are the protocols, and just be reminded that only TSIA certified test proctors should be administering the TSIA. Although this offers a much more flexible platform, those that are administering the TSIA still need to be certified and have individual logons. You should not be creating a general logon that you have a number of people using or a number of individuals using as a general account. Each test proctor must have their own individual account. A maximum of 5 administrations per time per proctor, at one time per proctor. And this is because if you've been in any type of meeting, the students have to be in individual breakout rooms for the administration of the TSIA. And if you've been in a Zoom meeting or a virtual chat web service meeting where you have breakout rooms, sometimes it's hard to navigate between the rooms. So 5 has been the number that has been identified as manageable. And the last 2 points on here, just owning on strict adherence to all test protocols set forth by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, as well as our test vendor, the College Board. And again, we are monitoring test results just to ensure that they are reliable and valid, and looking at trends and scores in terms of those from in-person juxtaposed against virtual web chat service, and even looking at those that were administered through Examity. Next. Next. So here's some commonly used abbreviations. And I did this slide because as I was putting together the slide deck, I noticed it's like, wow, we use a lot of jargon. And with the length of some of these words and what they stand for, sometimes we abbreviate them. So at your leisure, you will receive a copy of this presentation. And at any point, if you're unclear about a particular acronym or abbreviation used throughout the PowerPoint, you can refer back to this slide for clarity. Next. So here's the timeline. You'll note I'll skip all the way to the bottom in the red, and this is what we've been sharing, that the new launch date for the Texas Success Initiative 2.0 is January 11th, 2021. A number of people, A number of people had questions. Why was that date selected? And the rationale was, at this particular time, the vast majority of placements will have happened in higher education. So beyond that, due to constraints with the test vendor and maintaining our contractual obligations, that was the date that we had to go with. And we understand there is no perfect time to launch a new assessment, but unfortunately, the platform is not designed for multiple release dates. So if an institution has a specific circumstance in which this date is, let's just say, more impacting them more than another, we don't have the flexibility to do multiple launch dates. However, if you have a significant issue that you need assistance working through, definitely do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll do my best to provide you with the support and guidance that you need to successfully transition from the TSIA1, the current version, into the new version. Next. TSIA2 Enhancements. And this is an overview, and this is information that we've shared with the field for about a year now, but I'll highlight in a little bit more detail a couple of points through the next few slides. Of course, we're aligned to the revised standards, the Texas College and Career Readiness Standards, the revised TEKS for English 3 and Algebra 2, the AEL or Adult Education and Literacy 2.0 standards, and the NRS or National Reporting Systems EFLDSs, and that stands for Educational Functional Level Descriptors. With the alignment of the TSIA2, the Texas College and Career Readiness Standards, for the most part, envelop the Algebra 2 and English 3 TEKS. And then when we get to the diagnostic portion of the assessment, we also have content aligned to the AEL 2.0 and NRS EFLDS standards. We've integrated reading and writing. So reading and writing is no longer standalone. So those two tests will not operate in individual sections. There's a new section on the TSIA2, the English Language Arts and Reading section. And this is to be more in line with what's happening with the SAT in terms of the evidence-based reading and writing, and then what we're seeing in K-12 as well. We've reduced the diagnostic test to 1. So no longer is there that tricky point for trying to understand who has that level 1 through 6 score and who does not. On the current assessment, if a student, for instance, in math receives a their CRC or that first score of 336 to 349, they go into what we call the developmental education diagnostic. That particular diagnostic doesn't return a diagnostic level score. However, it's assumed that that student is at least level 5 or level 5-6. If the student scores 310 to 335 in math on the current assessment, that student goes into the adult basic education diagnostic, and that student would automatically receive a diagnostic level score of 1 through 6. That creates a little bit of confusion sometimes in higher ed in terms of understanding who needs to have a diagnostic score, who doesn't, and then particularly with our reform in developmental education and our House Bill 2223, which requires institutions of higher education to place a certain number of students in accelerated developmental ed, i.e. co-requisite models, that level score is really important. So all students now on the TSIA2 that do not meet that college readiness benchmark on those first set of questions and they test into a diagnostic, they will receive a diagnostic level score of 1 through 6. This is one thing that we're really pleased to deliver with the TSIA2, and that's a second chance college readiness opportunity for math. As you may know, for the writing section, there's currently a second chance pass option where in tandem with their diagnostic score and their essay score and their CRC or that 310 to 390 score, the student has a second way of demonstrating college readiness beyond just the objective score or that 310 to 390 and that essay score of 4. So with the math now in the TSIA2, students will have the opportunity for that second chance. So I encourage you, as we roll out the TSIA2 and you're still administering the current TSIA, start pressing the importance of students taking their time with the diagnostic and definitely giving it their answering each question to the best of their ability, because on the TSIA2, the student definitely will have an opportunity to demonstrate college readiness through their diagnostic test performance. Next. We're increasing the transportability of test results. Scores can be sent directly to an institution at time of testing. So when the student actually takes the TSIA2, they can send their TSIA2 scores up to 3 institutions. And then also moving to the next bullet with the student portal, they'll also have access to retrieve their individual score reports and send additional score reports to institutions at their leisure. And all score send features and for the TSIA2 are free of charge. With the student portal, the students will also have access to tutorials, including the calculator and highlighter features. So currently, particularly as it relates to the calculator feature, the first time a student sees the pop-up or on-screen calculator is when they are entering the math section of the test. We've parsed those out now to where students can go into the student portal and actually play with the calculators and get a feel for how the test operates. And with the highlighter feature, they'll have the ability for both sections, for ELAR and math, to use the highlighter feature to highlight text and passages for the ELAR section, and in math, if it's a word problem, they'll be able to highlight content in the word problem, as well as they'll be able to highlight the answers in terms of if they're trying to eliminate responses and things like that. We're improving data matching, and a number of people don't know, but the TSIA test administrations, they don't all exist in one spot. So if a student takes the TSIA under a K-12 account, it's in one database. If it's under an IAT or Institution of Higher Ed account, it exists in another database. However, if you're familiar with the platform, you know that we do have cross-institutional reporting that allows you to look up student scores with their ID, with their first name, last name, the student ID, date of birth, and where they took the test. However, this is more focused on TEA accountability. So now we've added in a whole additional supplemental ID field to the platform. And with that, we're working to finalize with TEA the protocol in which we'll be using for that. But to give you a hint of where we're going with that, most likely the TSDS PIMS number, or that 10-digit ID number, that's the number that we'll be primarily using in the primary field for K-12 as ID numbers. And the supplemental field will be your local ID number. And again, the student will be able to retrieve their scores using either of those numbers. So if it's the local ID number that the student is more familiar with, they'll be able to place that into the ID field in the student portal when they're trying to look up their scores and retrieve those. And more information will be coming about that in the very near future. Next. And for those that I noticed in the remarks, a number of people were saying resources, resources, resources. So for all students, they will have access to the TSIA2 learning resources. What are the TSIA2 learning resources? It's a free online library of instructional and practice materials directly related to the TSIA2 content areas. So this cadre of materials is directly related to the content areas and sub-content areas that are identified in the TSIA2. It's available to students prior to testing. So prior to the test, the student will be able to go into the library, and if there's indeed a skill gap that's already been identified, I'll just use math, for instance. I struggle with linear equations. The student will be able to go in and pull videos, instructional videos, worksheets, and other practice material in order to help them become proficient in that area prior to testing. We recommend this for use with the high school college prep course, in addition to any college readiness classes that institutions of higher ed may be offering and things like that. And I don't have it on here, but it also has an educator portal associated with the TSIA2 learning resources, where college prep course faculty, Dev Ed faculty at IHEs can go in and you can create custom content for your students. So you can put together worksheets, you can assign instructional videos that you would like your students to see, and you can email those links out to students to have access to those materials. Now, it gets really unique where custom materials are also available with the Learning Locator Code. The Learning Locator Code is provided to any student that completes a diagnostic. So if a student doesn't meet that college readiness benchmark on those first set of questions, they go into the diagnostic once they complete it. If that student does not demonstrate college readiness through performance on the diagnostic, they're provided a learning locator code on their score report. And that when they click that learning locator code, it then takes them into the TSIA2 learning resources library. But instead of it being every resource that's available, it narrows down that body of resources to a number of resources that the student can engage in to address those specific skill gaps as identified based on their performance on the diagnostic test. So again, it uses the diagnostic test information to now create a custom set of materials for the student. And we're really excited about that. Next. And just as a reminder, there are several accommodations automatically provided with the TSIA as well as the TSIA2. The test is untimed, the save and continue later feature, and then just note it's not available for the essay, but it is for the what we refer to as the objective sections, the multiple choice sections, or the CRC college readiness classification test. The pop-up on-screen calculators are available as applicable for the math section. As a reminder, physical handheld calculators are not permitted for use with the TSIA. Each math question has been predetermined as to whether a calculator will be available for that question, and if available, what types of calculator are available for that particular test. A common question we get from our from K-12, well, the student has a calculator accommodation where they can use their handheld calculator on state assessments. And unfortunately, since this is a higher ed test, that accommodation would not apply here. And that was one of the main reasons that we parsed out the tutorial for the calculators into the student portal. So now a student can go and familiarize themselves and practice using and develop a comfort level with using a calculator to reduce anxiety and better understand those tools that are available there throughout the test. And again, the highlighter feature is available for both the ELAR and math tests. In K-12, you should work with your partnering IHE to determine the appropriate accommodations. So if you have a question about accommodations, we're working with your dual credit partner. And if you're independent and you don't have a dual credit partner, we're working on providing guidance to you and establishing those protocols, and those will be coming out in the near future. And you can always reach out to us at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board for assistance with that as well. Next. Scores for the TSIA and TSIA2 are valid for 5 years from date of testing. I did see one comment when you were giving your responses on how you felt that some students will be placed with the TSIA results and the TSIA2 results, and that is absolutely correct. That we didn't want to come January 11th just say, well, if you previously took the TSIA, your scores are no longer good. So definitely, we are launching a new assessment, but the scores for both assessments are good for 5 years from date of testing. And regarding the pre-assessment activity, we've received a number of questions regarding this as well. The THECB will continue to support a statewide pre-assessment activity, and it's currently provided through Quirium. And institutions that are providing their own pre-assessment activity, you will definitely need to update it once the full test specifications are released to bring that in line with the TSIA2. Next. And here's an overview of training. If you are a institutional TSIA platform administrator for your campus, you are required to attend these trainings, and hopefully this is not the first time you're hearing about this. Our colleagues over at the College Board have been doing a phenomenal job. I believe we're in our 3rd week of trainings, and you'll see the sessions as outlined to the right. And you must attend all 4 trainings for your institution to receive credit. And those who are required to attend are the institutional administrators. So if you have IA access to your platform, at least one person from each institution is required to complete all 4 trainings. And that one person has to complete all 4 trainings for your institution to receive credit. And that rationale is that person would then be responsible for ensuring that anybody that has access to the platform receives the necessary trainings that they need to remain in compliance with the applicable procedures and protocols. And note that you'll have to renew your certification annually. So no matter what your role is and to the platform, you'll have to renew your certification annually. However, for those institutional administrators, you're required, and it would risk your institution's account getting shut down if you did not adequately do your certification. So whereas I just said proctor reporters, proctors, site managers, whatever your role is, you are responsible for doing the trainings as well. But if you're an institutional administrator and you don't do your training, again, it's more consequential in terms of not being your account could be shut down temporarily until you came into compliance with that. So make sure as you're getting those indicators regarding the necessary trainings when you log in, that you're really heeding to those. Please place a place marker on your calendars. We don't want your operation or your ability to administer the TSIA impacted by failure to complete training. Next. Disclaimer. So now I'm going to share with you a little bit more detail about the test itself. The development of the TSIA2 is in its final stage. So though major changes are not anticipated, the details provided may differ slightly from those presented in this presentation. So I just want to highlight that. So again, you will receive a copy of this presentation, but note that the information may change slightly. So what does that test experience look like? Quite honestly, it almost mirrors the current assessment. So like the TSIA, the TSIA2 is computer adaptive. The pre-assessment activity is still required before testing. The test session begins with the college readiness classification test. And again, that's that first set of questions that the students receive that determines essentially, are you college ready, yes or no? If a student does not demonstrate college readiness on those initial questions, the student is required to take a diagnostic test. And yeah, if the student does not meet the college readiness benchmark on the CRC, the student is required to take a diagnostic test, and that refers to the essay as well. So I'll show you visually a little later what I mean by that as well, in terms of if a student doesn't meet the college readiness benchmark on the essay, that the student would have to take the diagnostic. And in most cases, the student will receive their individual score report immediately after testing. And usually the only time a student doesn't receive their ISR immediately after testing is if, let's just say they're taking the ELAR section and their essay was submitted for human grading. Their ISR would be withheld until that essay score is available. Next. So delving into the actual tests, with the mathematics test, each test, both mathematics and ELAR, they both have a college readiness classification test, or CRC, as well as a diagnostic test. For mathematics, that initial set of questions, or the CRC, will contain 20 items. And for the diagnostic test, it will be an additional 48 items. And I know the question usually comes, well, why are there so many more questions in the diagnostic test than there are in the college readiness classification test? Again, when I shared with you earlier in the presentation how the test is aligned, the college readiness content is the CRC, and that's the College and Career Readiness Standards, and that's inclusive of the revised TEKS for English 3 and Algebra 2. However, the diagnostic test now expands that assessment base, and we're looking at a much wider span beyond just the college readiness, the Texas College and Career Readiness Standards and the revised TEKS, to include the AEL standards as well as the NRS EFL DSs. But the diagnostic test, the 48 items, is actually more reliable because it's a more in-depth analysis of the student's ability in each content area. So whereas I'll show you in the next slide that how the breakdown per content area goes, with the diagnostic test is much more balanced, and it'll give a great assessment. With the ELAR section, the college readiness classification test, and excuse me, that's actually a misprint. Now I'll have this corrected before we send this out. It's actually 30 questions for the CRC. And that's with the combination of reading and writing. There's 15 questions per area, 15 for reading, 15 for writing. And again, for the diagnostic test, there are 48 items. And inclusive in the ELAR suite is the essay, and there's no change from the current TSIA essay requirements. It's still a persuasive essay, and 350 to 600 words, and is scored by an automated system in most cases. Next. And here's a delving again a little bit deeper into the test. So here are the test strands of quantitative reasoning, algebraic reasoning, geometric and spatial reasoning, and probabilistic and statistical reasoning. And then there for each, I've shared with you how many items we project to be associated with that particular area for the college readiness classification test. And again, For each area, it's 12 for the diagnostic. But for quantitative reasoning and algebraic reasoning, you'll see that those are really well balanced. One of the criticisms that we usually received about the current version of the TSIA is that it was heavily algebra focused. So with that, we sought to design or sought to deliver an assessment where it's more balanced in that CRC, to where, again, it'll demonstrate whether a student is prepared for success in any math, but it's not overly focused on algebra. And again, with the diagnostic, we've taken great lengths from the psychometric side in working with our test vendor to make sure that now the diagnostic is aligned with the CRC. What does that mean? As a little bit of background, in the current assessment, it's legitimately two separate tests. The college readiness classification test is a very different, not different, but it's a separate test than the diagnostic in terms of the item pool, as well as how those items are were weighted through the standard setting process as such. However, with this particular test, the TSIA2, both the CRC and the diagnostic, they share the same item pool. So now there's much more connectedness amongst those two tests in terms of the weighting of the items, given that it's computer adaptive. So in the past, we may have seen situations where a student scored a 310 on the lower end, let's just say a 320 on the math section of the TSIA, and then in the diagnostic, that student received a 5. And that's based on them being two very separate tests. Now with this, again, sharing the same item pool and the connectedness of them psychometrically, we don't anticipate having those situations where a student would score very low on the CRC and then score very high on the diagnostic. So the item difficulty is set as such, and we're really, really excited about that. So again, you'll see those math test strands there for your review, and the full test specification document will be released in the very near future. We hope to have it to you by the end of the month. And I know if my colleague from Region 1 is listening, I told him first quarter of 2021. However, we were able to get that up in the production cycle, so we should have that to you by the end of the month. Next. And for your review, the ELAR test strands: reading focused, literary text analysis, informational text analysis and synthesis. And there's 15 items on the CRC and 24 items on the diagnostic that are reading focused. For writing, and you will see those: essay revision and editing, sentence revision, editing, and completion. And again, 15 items and 24 items on the diagnostic. Next. And real quick, I'm gonna run through these next few slides, but understanding the scores, it operates much like the current assessment. The thing that you'll see, and again, these are the proposed scores, that 910 to 990, it starts with a 9 and not a 3. And our goal there was to reduce any confusion on what version of the test was being presented in terms of the scores. The diagnostic test range is still level 1 through 6. And the essay will be graded 1 through 8. And as you see, the subject areas, there's only 2: mathematics and English language arts and reading. So a student is only complete in 1 or 2 areas now. It's no longer 3. So whereas now it's reading, writing, and math, under the TSIA2, they'll be complete in mathematics or ELAR. And again, the diagnostic test provides feedback on areas of strength and weakness, and they should be used when considering placing students into developmental coursework or options for high school complete students, or for college prep options for high school students. Next. Delving into the diagnostic profile, it has 3 components. It'll give you the overall diagnostic level score of 1 through 6. a proficiency level statement for each strand, which will be basic, proficient, or advanced. And note that this terminology is a little different than what we currently use, which are the three categories of limited, needs improvement, limited proficiency, and then proficient. So the proficiency statements under the TSIA2 will be basic, proficient, or advanced. And one thing I really want to highlight here is that within each proficiency level, it contains its own range, although that range or that number is not returned to you. When you see basic, proficient, or advanced, you'll see that for each of the strand areas. So for math, it'll say algebraic reasoning, and it'll have basic, proficient, or advanced. However, I want to highlight that you may have the same combination of proficiency levels for two students, yet their diagnostic level score might be different. One may result in a 5, one might result in a 6. And that's because that within that statement, there's a wide variety of range, and we like to just generally think of that as low, medium, and high. So although a student has proficient all the way across, it may not result in a diagnostic level score of 6 if they're at the lower end of that proficiency level. And last but not least, the learning locator code. The learning locator code, again, I highlighted that in the enhancements, provides the student with customized access to practice and instructional materials in the TSIA2 learning resources. Next. Here are the scores and how the students can demonstrate college readiness for math. Those 2 ways, and these again, these are the proposed scores. These will not be finalized until they're subject to approval by our board, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, during the meeting on October 22nd. So provided the outcome of that meeting, we will definitely update you on whether these are now proposed or going back to the drawing board, or if these are the accepted and official college readiness benchmarks for the TSIA2. And note that these benchmarks, they weren't pulled out of a hat. These benchmarks were developed through a quite extensive standard setting process of content experts from the K-12 sector, higher ed. In higher ed, we had both 2-year and 4-year institution faculty serving. We had those who serve in adult education. And so we had a wide, a diverse pool of content experts that came together and provided their assessment on each item that's associated with the test, and definitely what skills are needed for students to demonstrate college readiness, and these were the results. So with that, for mathematics, a CRC score greater than or equal to 950, or if the CRC is less than 950 and a diagnostic score of diagnostic level equal to 6. So that's that second chance option that I was speaking of, that if a student goes into the diagnostic for math and achieves a diagnostic level of 6, that student would then be classified as college ready. So ELAR, a CRC greater than or equal to 945, and an essay score greater than or equal to 5. And first off, we received a number of comments just regarding, okay, so we noticed that the essay score is going from 4 to 5. With the integration of reading and writing, we put a little bit more emphasis on the writing section or the writing sample to ensure that the writing is adequately assessed in terms of college readiness. And with that second chance opportunity for the ELAR, if the CRC is less than 945 and the diagnostic score is greater than or equal to 5, and again, a essay score greater than or equal to 5, and that's that second chance opportunity for ELAR. And the last thing that I want to highlight here is even if the scores are accepted, we will be monitoring the scores within this first year quite intensive in terms of looking at the trends, in terms of how students are doing, And we are on target that with our contract with the College Board that they will be producing the validity study after 1 year of results. So we'll anticipate having the validity study somewhere about the summer of 2022, and we'll make any adjustments to the scores based on that validity study, just as we did back in 2017 with the validity study for the current assessment. So next. And here's the visual in terms of how students go through the test. So I try to do my best with color coding this, and where you see the red boxes, that's the end of the test for the student. So starting with the math CRC, if you go directly across following the red arrow, 950 to 990, that student is college ready. Or if the student makes 910 to 944, they go into the math diagnostic test, again, 48 questions, and the student has 1 or 2 exit points. If the student receives a diagnostic level of 6, that student goes up and they're also considered college ready. Or if the student does not meet that, if it's level 1 through 5, it goes to the right and the student receives their diagnostic profile and their learning locator code, again, for that customized access to the TSIA2 learning resources. Next. And for ELAR, it gets a little bit more complicated, as you can see. So walking you through this real briefly, the first 30 questions, the ELAR CRC, following the purple line first. If the student scores 945 to 990, the student is then administered the essay. And pending how they do on the essay determines what happens next. If the student receives an essay score of 5 through 8, the student goes straight across and they're considered college ready, end of test. If the student does not receive that college readiness benchmark and it's an essay score of 1 through 4, they go into the ELAR diagnostic test, again, 48 questions, and pending the result on that diagnostic, if the student receives a diagnostic level of if the student receives a diagnostic level of 5 and they have the essay of the college readiness score on the essay as well, that student would be considered college ready. So, and then if they don't, and they receive the essay, the diagnostic level of 1 through 3, again, the student would receive their diagnostic profile and learning locator code. And going to the bottom with the blue arrows, if the student receives a 910 to 944 on the ELAR and they go into the diagnostic, if the student receives a level 1 through 3 on the diagnostic, the student will not receive the essay. So that's important to know. The student would end the test there. And the rationale is if the student received the diagnostic level of 1 through 3, that they're going into that more underprepared area. And honestly, it would be overkill to give them the essay at that particular point. However, the student would be able to, again, engage in those TSIA2 learning resources provided with their learning locator code and retake the ELAR test at any time. Next. And here's something that might be of extreme value to you, the cost of the test. And I know that actually came up in your thoughts as well. So the costs reflected are those paid to purchase the test, not the fee, if applicable, a student may be charged by an institution. So you'll notice that with the TSIA2, the unit cost is much cheaper than the unit cost for the, not the unit cost per se, it's still $1.75 per unit. But when we're looking at the administration of the whole test with the current TSIA, it's $14. With the TSIA2, it's $11.48. So we're able to reduce the test by $2.52. And note that institutions should consider the financial impact to students when setting any administrative fees with related to the TSIA, TSIA2. Upwards, particularly IHEs, we have some that charge students upwards of $20 per section. And as you can see, if All I need is the math test. I might potentially take the math and the math diagnostic. So the maximum cost to the institution would be 175 times 2. I was trying to do the math in my head, $3.50. But the institution may charge the students still that flat rate of $20. So we're just asking institutions that as you set those administrative costs that you be sensitive to that. Next. And last, I'm wrapping up. Here's the TSIA2 documentation that we'll be providing to the field. We should have the TSIA2 test specifications document as well as the blueprint document to you early November. We're really excited about that. And the majority of the documentation, the student brochures, interpreting your scores, and the technical manual, we should those are on target to be released with the actual assessment, but we should have those hopefully a little bit prior to the release, but the delivery date is set for January 2021. And again, as I shared earlier, the TSIA2 validity study summer 2022. And I'll forego this slide for the sake of time, but the only thing I'll highlight here is we're very committed to supporting institutions and our college readiness stakeholders across the state in this work, particularly as it surrounds developmental education reform on the higher ed side. And then in terms of college readiness, advising particularly, we're partnered with Texas OnCourse to deliver a module that they talked about earlier, and we're really excited about that. So if you have any questions regarding how best to advise, things like that, our contact information is in that module, and we'll be more than happy to work with you. Next. And here's our listserv. If you're interested in subscribing to our TSI or Developmental Education Gov Delivery listserv, the information is there for you. And there is where, that was actually my last slide, I believe. And I apologize for going over time. I know we're only scheduled till 11, but hopefully the information that I shared with you, you found it helpful and useful. And be on the lookout. And we will be doing webinars for our each for K-12 and institutions of higher education about probably the middle of November as it relates to more information about the TSIA2 and launch.
Thank you so much, Keelan. We're going to go a couple minutes over because I know we have we have Allison Hasso. I'm going to let her, and then this is all the contact information. And as we've seen a lot of questions in the chat box, we are keeping track of those, and we will send out all of, we will compile the questions, get you some answers, and send all of this information out to you. So we're just going to go just a couple of slides ahead because I know a lot of our K-12 systems like to hear what districts are doing. Allison, would you like to take it away and talk a little bit about what you do in Brazosport ISD? And if you need to leave the webinar, we'll follow up with a recording for you.
Absolutely, thank you. So I'm pleased to share what our current practices are in Brazosport ISD. You know, with the addition of the CCMR needing to get students college, career, military ready, and the TSI being one avenue for us to show that our students are CCMR, we started thinking about what are some ways that we could increase the number of students that we're having testing with the TSI. So historically, we would have our college that we have our dual credit partnership with. They would come out and they would offer testing sessions periodically throughout the semester, a couple of times, just to get our kids ready for dual credit courses. Now we have gone ahead and we have each of our high school campuses as a registered testing site. So we have administrators on those campuses who are, you know, credentialed to offer the TSI assessment. So what they have done is they have scheduled 1 week per month to offer the TSI testing. They had to sit down with our testing coordinators and really look at what's the best week per month to offer the TSIA. So that it's not conflicting with any other campus-based tests that we have, whether that be our campus-based assessments that we do quarterly, whether that be our SAT, PSAT campus dates. We wanted to make sure that there was no conflicting schedules as far as when they're offered. So once students meet with their alpha counselor and they're talking to them about wanting to sign up for a dual credit course, or if they're looking at ways to reach their CCMR status, then our alpha counters have the students sign up on a Google form to indicate that they would like to take the TSI. You'll go to the next slide. So off of that Google form, our staff member that is our TSI test administrator, they make sure that they contact the students 2 weeks prior to the actual testing date to make sure that the student has completed the pre-assessment, that their registration is complete, that they're registered for the correct sections. And one of the things that we've made sure is that we're offering the testing during the school day. So rather than sending them over to our dual credit partnership campus and saying, you need to do this in the evening time, we're actually allowing them to do that during the school day, and we're covering the cost of that test for them. Recently, our district approved to fund up to 2 classes per semester for dual credit. And so to help get students ready to take those dual credit courses and to increase the number of students who are taking dual credit, we found that it would be important for us to make sure that we're covering the cost. We also cover the cost of the TSIA. So those are just a couple of things that we've put into place recently to make sure that we're, eliminating any barriers that our students may face in order to sign up and get tested for the TSI.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Allison. While we wrap up, I wanted to, one of the themes that I saw in the questions, Keelan, if you're able to answer this, is people seem to want some additional information on the trainings. Can you speak to the training details and where that information can be found before we close out?
Yes, I'll send you and I guess I'll send you the link with the addendum to that one slide regarding the ELAR information. But if you go, I'm trying to think, if you have access to the TSIA platform, when you log in, you should see the TSIA2 or the TSIA splash screen, and it's all information. It's the one that you can't click past. So it's the static landing screen in the platform, and the link is on there. However, I will make sure that the registration link is provided to you. If you don't have access to your platform, I would suggest contact your institutional administrator on your campus, and they can also provide you with that link, but we'll make sure you have it as well.
Perfect. And once again, I know we've gone 5 minutes over, and I think that's perfectly fine because we had some fantastic information. So thank you to Keelan Morgan and to Allison Hasso from Brazosport, as well as Samantha covering our Texas OnCourse information. In the past, we have taken, kept track of all of the questions that you all have put in the chat box, and we will get your links out, as Keelan mentioned. Also, maybe we'll do a Q&A sheet for you. So stay on the lookout for the follow-up email with all of the information. Thank you all so much. We had a lot of really great questions, and we will talk to you all soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all.